Hey, I'm GT, and welcome to the Stuff You Should Think About podcast, where I take interesting things you should think about and I break them down in just a few minutes. In today's episode, we'll discuss mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction, or MAD, is a military doctrine where a full scale use of nuclear weapons by opposing superpowers would result in the complete annihilation of both the attacker and the defender, effectively deterring direct conflict through shared survival stakes. Mutual assured destruction is a nuclear strategy built on the idea that if two opposing nations launch full scale nuclear attacks against each other, both sides will be completely annihilated, making the act of starting a nuclear war equivalent to committing suicide. It's rooted in deterrence theory. The threat of retaliation is so catastrophic that neither side dares to strike first. The concept took shape during the Cold War when the United States and the Soviet Union transitioned from early nuclear imbalance to a world where both possessed enough destructive power to wipe out the other. The U.S. initially held a monopoly on atomic weapons from 1945 to 1949 and relied on the doctrine of massive retaliation, threatening overwhelming nuclear response to Soviet aggression. But once the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957 and developed intercontinental ballistic missiles, the U.S. homeland was no longer unreachable. By the 1960s, strategists began using the acronym MAD, often critically to highlight the absurdity of relying on mutual annihilation as a form of stability. Robert McNamara later formalized the doctrine by arguing that deterrence only works when both sides have a secure second strike capability, meaning they can absorb a surprise attack and still inflict unacceptable damage in return. For MAD to function, certain technical conditions must exist. Both sides must maintain nuclear forces that cannot be eliminated in a first strike, which led to the development of the nuclear triad: land-based ICBMs in hardened silos, strategic bombers capable of carrying nuclear payloads, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles hidden in the oceans. Submarines, in particular, guarantee second strike capability because they are nearly impossible to locate and destroy during peacetime. Early warning systems, radar networks, and satellites became essential so that nations could detect incoming launches and respond before enemy warheads landed, a posture known as launch on warning. Ironically, pure MAD theory views strong defensive systems as destabilizing. If one side could reliably shoot down incoming missiles, it might be tempted to launch a first strike, believing it could avoid retaliation. Because an uncontrolled arms race was economically draining and strategically dangerous, the U.S. and the USSR entered into treaties to stabilize the nuclear balance. The Partial Test Ban Treaty of 1963 restricted nuclear testing, while the SALT agreements in the 1970s capped the growth of strategic arsenals. The 1972 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty was especially important because it legally limited missile defense systems, reinforcing the idea that neither side should attempt to become invulnerable. Later agreements like START and New START reduced deployed warheads and formalized verification measures, shaping the modern nuclear landscape. Despite preventing direct war between the superpowers, MAD has faced criticism and has come close to failing. The doctrine assumes rational decision makers and flawless technology, but history shows otherwise. False alarms and human judgment errors nearly triggered nuclear retaliation, such as the 1983 incident where Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov recognized a computer warning as a malfunction rather than an actual U.S. missile launch. The same year, the NATO exercise Able Archer was misinterpreted by the Soviet leadership as a possible cover for the real attack. MAD also becomes more fragile in a multipolar world. Regional nuclear rivals like India and Pakistan face shorter missile fight times and less sophisticated command and control systems, increasing the risk of miscalculation. And MAD offers no deterrence against non-state actors or terrorist groups who have no territory or population to hold hostage. In modern era, the strict U.S.-Russia bipolar version of MAD has evolved into a more complex, multilateral deterrence environment. The United States and Russia still maintain large nuclear arsenals built around second strike capability, but China's growing nuclear force, North Korea's unpredictable posture, and Iran's ambiguous status create a web of overlapping deterrence relationships. New technologies, hypersonic weapons, cyber operations targeting nuclear command systems, and AI-driven decision tools threaten to shorten reaction times and undermine the stability that MAD traditionally relied on. Mutually assured destruction remains one of the most unsettling ideas in military strategy. A peace maintained not by trust or diplomacy, but by the credible threat of universal destruction. Despite its moral hazards and dependence on rational behavior, it continues to shape nuclear policy and international relations, standing as a reminder that the world's most destructive weapons are kept in check by the fear of what would happen if they were ever used. Thanks for tuning in to The Stuff You Should Think About. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a comment wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show. It really helps the podcast grow.